Fireside Tales. Hello, I'm Merlin, Mililli. Welcome to my fireside, where I tell tales, weird tales, and I drink coffee. I drink coffee from my Grateful Dead mug. I used to have a skull mug, but my kids broke it. So now I have a Grateful Dead mug. It's just coffee with a hit of cream. It's actually just milk, whole milk. So welcome to Fireside Tales, Season 4, Episode 2. I talk about the Grateful Dead every week here at the Fireside Tales. Excuse me. I tell the story of the Grateful Dead from the Tibetan Book of the Dead every week here at Fireside Tales, because it's a story about reincarnation. Every week here at Fireside Tales, we discuss reincarnation. Today we're going to discuss meditation in a more complete way than normally. I discovered a record of who I had been. That was Bear. Who I had been in previous lives in my book, in the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records is a meditative library. It's a metaphysical library on another plane that you can only reach through meditation. And through meditation, I discovered the Akashic Records and my book, and who I've been, and where I've been, and when I've been. The Akashic Records holds a book for everyone's soul, and it is the story, basically, of where your soul has been, and when it has been, and who it has been. So my book in the Akashic Records is really big and dirty and old, dusty. And it has this watermark, which I think, marks the Great Flood. And the beginning of my book is light and dry and sandy, and my lives are very long in the beginning of the book, like thousands of years long, which is kind of strange, but it coincides with the King's List, which is carved in a couple different languages on a stone. And the later half of my book is dark and wet and muddy, and my lives are much shorter. Much shorter. Like hardly reaching my 30s shorter. So, in my book, linking each life in my book to the next are these threads. And reincarnation is one of the threads, obviously. And meditation is another. I've been meditating since I was 16. I am turning 52 next Friday. 36 years, that's a long time. And this kind of meditation is actually transcendental meditation, which I recommend you take your spirit guides with you to the Akashic Records if anybody ventures there. I was given a key in a meditation by a high priestess. I meditated on the high priestess card in the tarot deck, and she gave me a key to the Akashic Records, and I've been going there reading my book ever since. I only read my book. I don't have any desire to read anybody else's book. I don't really see the point in that. It's none of my business. So, I'm going to tell the story of the Grateful Dead. As it should be told, by a deadhead, by a fire. Once, long, long ago, there was a traveler. And she traveled far and wide by foot because it was long, long ago. So one day she was traveling along and she happened upon a village. And in the village, there was a crowd. As she got closer, she noticed that the crowd was arguing. As she got closer still, she noticed that the crowd was arguing over, quite literally, over a dead body. There was a dead body laying there, and they were squabbling over who was going to pay his debts, and who was going to bury him, and who was going to pay for that. The traveler thought this was just disgusting. So she stopped the village people and she paid the dead man's debts, and she paid for a proper burial, and she prayed over the dead man's grave. And then she traveled on. Being really weird over there. He's like half under a dresser. He's out now. I didn't know he could fit under there. Anyhow, so then decades later, the traveler from the beginning of the story happened upon a life or death situation where she was swooped up and her life was saved. She said to the stranger who saved her life, "Thank you. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why did you save my life?" And the stranger said simply, "I am the Grateful Dead." Coffee needs a little more milk. So it's a story about reincarnation. Some people say that the stranger at the end is a zombie or a corpse. It's not. Zombies and corpses don't save lives. But reincarnated people do. Especially if they remember that somebody did a kind deed for them. Like paid their debts and paid for a proper burial and prayed over their grave. So I have a lot of threads that link every life to the next. I normally show you how to smudge and ground. Smudging is one of my threads, but it's also when you burn a dried sage stick and you cleanse your aura with the smoke from the burning dried sage stick. And then grounding, I can show you how you ground. It's a breathing exercise, basically, and you blow out all of your negativity. Then you think an uber positive thought, and then you blow out positivity. Breathe in, obviously, thinking an uber positive thought, and then blow out positive energy. Sometimes it takes a couple of tries if there's a lot of negative energy around. But I ground and smudge before I do any meditating. I ground and smudge before I do any readings. I read tarot and runes. I ground and smudge before I do any rituals. So it's just a way to get your most positive results from whatever you're doing. Your meditation, your ritual, your reading. It's getting your spirit in the right zone, basically. So fire is another one of my threads. Fire safety. I have a kettle full of water up on top, and my sprayer is around the corner. If you're building a fire outside, you want to make sure there's no overhanging branches at the spot that you choose, that it's nice and open. And then you want to dig a hole and fill it with stones, line it with stones, and then put a ring of stones around so that you don't get fire catching on things like grass and whatnot, then you want to have a bucket of water and a shovel nearby. Or, if you're near civilization, a hose will work also. If you have it on with a sprayer and ready to spray things. I live in California, so fire safety is very important, but it's always been very important. It's always been very important. So, still important. Stars, stones, and being a psychic medium are also threads of mine. And as a psychic medium, I've been in contact for a very long time. In this life, since I was a child, with the spirit realm. I'd probably spend more time on the astral plane than I spend here on this plane. I prefer it, to be honest. But the spirits think that in order for one to be reincarnated, they first have to also be murdered. Like, you get another chance if you get murdered. Get to come back and try again. So this season of Fireside Tales takes us to ancient Egypt. And we talked last week about how I was in my fourth life, which we've been discussing this season, Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut. I don't know if I said that right. I don't think I said my name very often. So, what we know about Hatshepsut is what we'll be discussing today. And like I said, she's the fourth life in my book in the Akashic Records. A long life in the light, dry, sandy part of my book. That of Hatshepsut, the Pharaoh. We're talking around 1505 BC. We know that she was the first recorded female pharaoh, though there are some who tried to erase her from history. So the fact that she's recorded it all is amazing. And one of the reasons why she is recorded is the architecture that she left behind. And it's beautiful architecture with her whole story carved into stone on it. So her story is extensive. There's so much architecture. And it was built by her architect, Cinema, who I believe was also the father of her daughter. But because he was an architect and he had been kind of part of her father's cabinet, I guess you could say, he'd worked for her father and he worked for her. It was inappropriate for them to marry. So I think they just made a child together. Um, he was an architect, a man of knowledge, and he tutored her daughter. And I can't pronounce her daughter's name, so I'm not going to try. I don't know. It begins with an N. Anywho, so to have a man of knowledge who is being paid by the pharaoh to be their architect, I don't understand why he would take the time out of his day to tutor the pharaoh's daughter unless she was also his daughter. She was married for a brief while to her half brother, and but her half brother died and was a lot younger than her, and they never consummated anything. There wasn't anything like that. They didn't make a child. So then she had a stepson who hung in the balance. And the stepson could have been Pharaoh, but he was very young when her father died. Her father had been Tutmosis the First, and he had trained her to be Pharaoh. And so she knew how to be Pharaoh. And she did it well. She reigned for 22 years, and she had no slaves in her kingdom, I guess you could call it. She reigned over the whole Nile region, upper and lower Nile region, and which is vast. And yeah, she paid people. It may have been in beer or bread or what have you, but it still was payment for their work done. And there was peace and prosperity for most of her reign, although she did apparently lead at least 2 campaigns to keep some of the neighboring tribes at bay. And then when her stepson became older, it gets weird because they had a rivalry which ended in her death, which makes me think that he might have murdered her for the throne, which he did get once she was dead. There's this one, excuse me, documentary on her that had these 2 skeletons. They weren't sure they knew one of them was probably Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut. And um, the other one obviously wasn't. But they didn't know which was her. And one of them was screaming. And the other one looked peaceful. And I knew for sure that it was the screaming one. Because I'm positive that she was murdered. Um, which may have led to her life being a bit shorter than it really should have been, because it really doesn't seem like it was thousands of years, maybe 1,000 years, which is still extensive for a human, but it was cut short by her stepson, I think. That's just my opinion. Which, my opinion and what I know to be true is what we'll cover next week. And she established trade and led military campaigns. She had a navy. They recently found her hemp ropes that are still intact, believe it or not. 1505 BC. Why did we stop making hemp rope? That was dumb. Oh, it was the DuPont company. That's a whole nother story we'll get into maybe someday. But not today. So, that's about all we really know for sure. And it's hard to know a lot for sure. And that, like I said, there is a lot of stone that was strangely chipped away that told her story or made her her. Some of the chips away at stone make her a him. Because we don't want to have record of a female pharaoh doing a really good job. So, every week here at Fireside Tales, I also sing Deja Vu, David Crosby's Deja Vu. I did write a song about reincarnation, and I think I sang it once here on Fireside Tales, and then David Crosby died. So I felt bad. So then I wanted to sing Deja Vu again. Because before I wrote the reincarnation song, which I believe is called Reincarnation, Deja Vu was the only song I ever heard that even sort of talked about reincarnation. So I believe it's a song about reincarnation. I believe the story of the Grateful Dead is a story about reincarnation. I've talked this whole while about reincarnation. I told you I was going to do that. So now, as I also told you, I'm going to sing Deja Vu. wheel, I would probably know just how to deal with all of you. And I feel like I've been here before. Feel like I've been here before, and you know, it makes me wonder what's going on. Under the ground. Do you know? Don't you wonder? What's going on down under you? La da da, la da da, la da da, la da da da, da. We have all been here before. 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 Fire. It's not very glowy, I don't think, from your point of view, but it's hot. Trust me. So, next week we'll discuss smudging at more length, and I'll actually bring my smudge stick and I'll smudge, and we'll discuss what I know in my soul and from my book about my soul, what I know about Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut. It's like you don't know your own phone number because you don't call yourself. It's hard to pronounce an old name when You never used it. I don't even think she actually was called Hatshepsut. I think she was sort of called she or Shah, but not Hatshepsut. So that's it for us today. Join us next week where we'll continue our story about Hatshepsut and ancient Egypt. And we'll talk about smudging, and I'll bring my smudge stick, like I said. So, have a weird and wonderful weekend. Thanks for watching. I'm a Lily's too.